everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Red Effect Podcast. I'm your host, Coltin Schachtner, and today we have Austin here with Earthoptics. So, Austin, can you tell us a little about you and what you've done in the past?
Yeah, so I'm Austin Koch. I'm the regional sales manager for Earthoptics here in the Western Corn Belt. A little bit about me is got a background in seed and agronomy. Kind of spent all throughout college working with agronomists in Northeast Nebraska. Did a lot with like seed treating, checking fields, doing plant tissue samples, soil samples. Really got an understanding of, how to work with farmers, what their wants are, kind of the challenges they face. And yeah, when I finished college, started in the seed industry, worked as a district sales manager for a regional company, and learned a lot there. Was there for about 4 years, and then, kind of made my way into pattern ag. The big thing there is, with seed, you kind of look at, hey, why did we have this failure in the crop? Why did we have lodged corn, or why are stalks kind of just self-eating each other? So, when pattern ag came up to me and talked to me about what they were doing, I was all bought in. So, when you can kind of understand what your hidden pests are, what those different disease and pathogen levels are before the season, it's huge. Being able to have manageable decisions going into next year is kind of that secret ingredient to making sure you're set up for success. So, and another cool thing with our DNA analysis, especially with the biologicals kind of becoming a big thing, is really fine-tuning the biofertility metric of our DNA analysis. So, hey, does this field need a biological product? And if we do, what type of biological can we, put out there and address that need? In the past, I think we've always looked at fertilizer and just saying, hey, we need this much macro or micronutrients, but there's a whole nother level of that soil. And honestly, even with what we're doing on the DNA side, there is a large chunk of soil we do not even know about yet. So just kind of understanding, hey, if we're low on this or if we're really high pressure issues, how can we help mitigate that and have a really good risk-based crop plan going forward?
Yeah, definitely. So it was about June of last year when we first met, you right? June or July, that time frame.
Yep. I think, I met with Ryan back in February, I think, of last year.
Okay.
And then we had some meetings, March, April time frame. And then we did some trials really early part of last year. I think we did 3 fields in the spring and saw some interesting results.
Yeah, definitely. But back to meeting you, when we finally learned what pattern ag, now Earthoptics, was able to do, we were very excited to see that what the potential was, and it definitely allowed us to see those hidden factors. And now with our customers doing it, it's opened us up to a whole nother world of management. What we like to say is we're taking the guesswork out of agronomy.
Yep.
So can you kind of talk about last year, the trends you saw through the testing and widespread trends? Doesn't have to be Nebraska or Iowa specifically.
Yeah, so our data science team does a wonderful job in research development. So our grower initiative actually kind of counts for about 50,000 acres of research and development and trialing data. What I've seen and what we've seen the last few years is, fusarium is a huge risk that, before I even joined Pattern, I knew it was there. It's on your seed treatment. It's effective against fusarium. But how much yield is fusarium actually, holding us back? And, when we compared high-risk fields to low-risk fields, we saw roughly a 30 bushel an acre advantage for low-risk fields. So, you talked before the show, if you want to get into that in-furrow trial.
Yeah, definitely.
We saw some of that data kind of correlate. Hey, high fusarium means we need to do something about it.
Yeah, and so for those of you at home, what Austin's referring to is we had a trial where we did in-furrow fungicides, and there's about 15 different in-furrow fungicides there. And when we tested it, we saw that Ryan's field had a lot of fusarium in them, and it also had a lot of stock jib in it. And depending on what zone you were in, depending on how much was in there. And it was amazing later in the summer when we went and started walking that field, that you could about see to the line where that split was in the amount of stock jib in the plants. And so that quantified the data to us and said, this is the real deal, that the further we get to this higher level, the more we show. So the data is good. The way they sample it is really good. In that plot, it was close to a 20 bushel spread, depending on the treatment. And you figure, especially Fusarium and stock gibberella, you can't control those with a foliar fungicide. It has to be in furrow. And there's not many people doing a lot of research on that. And our agronomist John's been telling us to do this for years. So we did it. We're very happy with it. We're going to do it again. But that's just something that this has allowed us to do, is tell our customers who have in-furrow systems, like, hey, this is what you have out here. This is what you have to do. But on top of that, like where I'm from in Iowa, we don't have many in-furrow systems. And like we've talked before, the amount of seed treatment you put on there probably isn't enough.
No.
And so when you figure that some of our products, based on the cost it is today, had a 19x return, I don't know of anything on the stock market that gives you that return, but that allows growers to be a lot more profitable.
Absolutely. And, just trying to find that little tweak of how can we make our crop, even 5 or 10% more better and profitable to increase that ROI is something that every farmer is trying to figure out, especially with commodities where they're at today. With the tests that we do, is it's really understanding, hey, what are our hidden risks? Mm-hmm. Where do we need to spend our money and spend it more efficiently? Because, we might be spending money on all of these biologicals or all these fungicides. Well, how do we know which one's the right one to put out there? Mm-hmm. Having that deep dive into our tests, looking at, our foliar fungus, like northern cornleaf blight, tar spot, gray leaf spot. Is that our yield limiting factor, or is it something below the soil? Mm-hmm. With the soil-borne diseases, that we can really make a manageable and risk-based crop plan that's effective, and it's friendly to the farmer.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, and when we look at the different packages, especially with the complete bio within that, we have the below ground risks, the above ground, and then we also have biofertility. But in that below ground, we're also looking at things like soybean cyst nematode, corn rootworm. And can you just talk a little bit about that, how that helps us understand the risks we have out there?
Yeah, absolutely. So just diving deep into the corn rootworm, one of the cool things that we do at Earthoptics is we can actually differentiate between northern corn rootworm and western corn rootworm. So we can kind of understand, hey, is it an extended diapause issue, or is it a continuous corn issue where we're seeing high levels of western corn? And one thing that we've actually noticed in the last year or so is we're seeing western corn rootworm eggs getting laid on the edges of soybean fields. So we might have pressure, following a soybean field, where we've historically done, a double trade or a conventional type hybrid, and we might need that extra protection. So having that little know-how is really going to save us from costly root lodging from corn rootworm damage. And just to kind of piggyback off the cyst nematode corn rootworm analytics, the big thing that feeds into the accuracy of that data is our sampling protocol. So when we're doing our true bio sampling protocol, we're looking at 20-acre composite grids. We can also do Sergo or custom upload zones, but no matter what we're doing there, we're trying to get a subsample every acre out of that 20-acre zone. So when we're doing a 20-acre zone, we're getting 20 subsamples within that one sample, spread throughout that whole zone, so that we don't miss any of that DNA. Because things, especially like corn rootworm and cyst nematode, they develop in pockets of that field. Mm-hmm. So that's why we have that intensive sampling protocol, to make sure that we have good data that we can generate to the grower.
And just for clarification, it's a 0.8 acres. You're taking a core, and
Yes.
then it's a composite.
Yes. So we're taking 20 plus cores within mm-hmm. that one sample. Mm-hmm. So we have 20 subsamples within a sample that are spread evenly throughout that whole grid.
Yeah.
So it's really getting it fine-tuned, fine-detailed of, hey, do we have this pathogen or pest, or don't we? Mm-hmm. So we have to have that highly intensive sampling protocol to make sure that we pick up, all the DNA that's in that soil. So that's kind of the true bio side. Did you want to dig a little deep into the high-res nutrients that
Definitely.
we kind of, yeah. So this last fall, Earthoptics and Pattern Ag, we had a merger. So the great thing about that, so Pattern Ag brought to this partnership a great, tremendous lab, all of the bio information, a fantastic data science team, and a great network of dealers. What Earthoptics has been doing is they've been doing a lot of soil generation, soil mapping. So they're looking at generating high-res nutrients, high-res compaction maps, and then also high-res carbon maps for some guys in the climate market. When we're looking at, just the tone of that high-res nutrient map, if guys have done like a 2.5 acre grid in the past, what we're delivering to the grower is 100 times more dense than a 2.5 acre grid. So it's about 1,000 square foot grids is what we're working with today. So, the size of a wrestling mat. That's how tight our grids are. So really cool. We have that on the compaction as well. So our True Till, we actually have inch by inch data of that compaction. So you can see at 1 inch, 2 inch, all the way down to 18 inches, what our hard pan is, or where our hard pan is, how compacted it is. And then we can actually upload a rec into your John Deere K system with True Set or Soil Command, and have a variable rate, variable depth tillage prescription for that farmer.
And is there anybody else who has that?
No. Okay. We are the only company that can give you that level of data on a compaction map.
And I will say we've had a couple customers do it, and I've looked through the data. It's amazing that you look at from that 1 to 3 inch, and it's like, okay, there's no compaction. In that 4 to 6, it's like, oh, there's a little. Once you get much below that 6 inch, there becomes a lot of compaction. And in fact, Tom was looking at his when he got it back, and he's like, oh, that's where I replant every year on that farm, and it follows it almost to the line. And it's like, okay, so there's some underlying issues that we all think, oh, well, the freeze thaw will take it out. And this is showing us, especially down at the 18-inch mark, it is not getting down there, and it's not doing the job we want it to.
Yeah. No, I'd agree. And then also, like this last spring, we had those heavy rains in northwest Iowa, northeast Nebraska, where we saw, 15 plus inches in a day.
Yeah.
It's crazy, like even on my own farm, how that map lined up to exactly where the washing occurred. And there was a hard pan, once I got to about that 6 to 8 inch level, it was extreme. I mean, we were looking at 700 PSI. And just to put that in instance, if we get above 300 PSI, roots can't penetrate that. So we have reduced water uptake, reduced nutrient uptake, and then our biology activity of that soil pretty much ceases to exist.
Yeah.
So making sure we can alleviate that compaction, have healthy soils is kind of the key.
And we got to think too, rain is our number one compactor. A acre inch of water has over 27,000 gallons in it. And you get 8 of those in a day. That's a lot of weight sitting on there.
Yes.
And like you just said, it's a lot deeper than we think. And the important part for everybody at home, when you're doing tillage, to achieve fracture, you need to be a 1/2 inch deep for every inch of width. So if you have a 30-inch shank, you need to be a minimum of 15 inches deep, which with most of our disc rippers, we're not getting anywhere close to that. So we need to look at different options for tillage. And if you're on the fence about buying an inline ripper, well, go do this, and you'll see why you need to go blow all that diesel fuel to get the ground tilled up right.
Absolutely. And then another thing of like the True Till is, if we need to till and rip and alleviate that compaction, let's do it. But if we have areas where we're not compacted, there's a lot of cost savings in fuel, time, labor, of not having to rip the areas that you don't need to. So, because there's plenty of producers that, especially in certain areas where it tends to have compaction, where they're ripping every single acre of the field, and they might not need to do that. So,
definitely. And so, can you talk a little bit about? So now we got these 10 by 10 meter grids, or a quarter of an acre, very small grids. How does the farmer take that and take action on it?
Yeah, so we have our own scripting tool within our web platform. We can do, Iowa State, Tri-State, NDS or SDSU, Minnesota's Rex. We're going to have the ability to import your own formula here shortly. So our system works really well. We can export a generic shape file. We can work with any Raven, Case, John Deere Ag Leader system. You can import it straight to your operation center, field view. a lot of different API connections there. So what we can do with that is we can build a script either at that 10 by 10 meter level. We can do a 60 foot by 60 foot, 80 foot by 80 foot, quarter acre, half acre, 1 acre. We can build it up to whatever your system can take. Because, when we're looking at a typical quarter, typically with 2.5 acre grid, you're getting 64 data points. We're getting 6,400.
Yeah.
So it's a lot of data. Some systems might not be able to take it in, but we can kind of, even it down a little bit. And there's still a lot of valuable information there, when we're looking at a half acre versus 2.5 acre.
Yeah, definitely. And playing around with that system, I think my personal favorite is the 60-foot swath, where it just makes sense if you have a spread of 60 foot. Well, let's just only change the variables north and south and not east and west at the same time.
Absolutely. And that's a lot of people have been doing is either that 60-foot option or the 80-foot option, just because a lot of spreaders have that width, and it just makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, definitely. And with that, how much more efficient do you think we are in nutrients now that we're 100 times more precise on our data?
A lot more efficient. When we're talking, phosphorus, right before the show, we were talking about, I was looking at my break-even levels from my 2019 crop to what this year's crop is. MAP's doubled in 6 years. So making sure that we're applying the right amount of phosphorus on the right acre. We're not necessarily going to make you spend more money or spend less money, but we're going to make sure it's optimized. So it's on the right acre where it's needed instead of, on the wrong acre. And then we either have excess where we could have spent that money somewhere else, or we're going to be starving the crop, and then we're going to see some deficiencies. So I think a huge thing is like, hey, let's make sure that we're the most efficient that we can be on this farm instead of, blanket applying a whole fertilizer script.
So moving a little further on to the crop planning tool. Now, we've got all this information. Information that you're unable to take action upon is useless. So can you just give a nice overview of the crop planning tool from the seed and beyond?
Yeah, absolutely. So, when you typically get analysis back from a lab, it's like, okay, what do I do with this information? Sometimes guys will just take the data and not do anything with it. And that's really kind of a waste of your money for sampling in the first place. What we've been able to do is actually create a crop planning tool where we take in all of your pest pathogen, biofertility data, and we can make a simple, easy to execute plan based off of, what seed brands you're planting today, what kind of crop protection companies you're working with and the products that you're working with today. So you can kind of, compare and contrast based off their label ratings. Hey, this one's going to be a little bit better on tar spot, and this one's better on northern corn leaf blight. Well, if I don't have any tar spot, I'm going to probably want to have the one that's best on northern corn leaf blight. So it pretty much aggregates out every single product that's on the marketplace to make sure that, we have the right product on each field, so that we're set up for success. And the same thing with the biofertility market. It's like, hey, if we have low P solubilization activity and we need to break down that phosphorus, let's make sure the product that we put out there is going to do that.
Definitely.
So,
yeah, and from my experience with the crop planning tool, it is really cool because you guys have the majors for the seed, the Bears, the Cortevas, the Syngentas, they're in there. So if you're buying from one of those brands, most likely the data's there. And it is fun to sit down with a seed dealer and be like, okay, well, let's look at some different hybrids and to see like why this one might work better in this area compared to a hybrid that's very similar, but has a different disease package.
Yeah, absolutely. And, we can make it as tight of a crop plan as possible, or we can have it as broad. So we could put in like the whole catalog of that specific seed brand. Or, let's say I'm sitting down with Coltin-Kramer and he bought 4 hybrids from me. I'm only going to put 4 hybrids in that mix because I want to make sure that the 4 hybrids that we did purchase, it's going to go on the right field.
Yeah.
So, we can dumb it down to that level, or we can have it as expansive as possible. But for like the spring season right now, guys that are sampling, I'm just saying, hey, we already got the seed bought. Let's put in the seed that we've ordered, have in the shed, and make sure that, we're, dotting our I's and crossing our T's to make sure that we have the right product on the right acre.
Yeah, definitely. Make sure the field's ready before you load the planter.
Yes.
Don't load the planter and find a ready field.
No kidding.
And then one thing, too, with that, beyond the seed, is the options for the in-furrow and then your fungicides. I know it's always in-furrow. Well, do I need bifenthrin? Do I need XYZ? Well, with that risk chart at the top, so we'll put up a picture of it, but the risk chart shows you how big of a risk it is, and every product you put in there shows whether you're mitigating that risk or not.
Absolutely.
And then at the end, it says you have 1 or 2 open risks based upon what you put in there. And that allows you to build a plan in the fall, if you do it in the fall, to say, okay, maybe I don't need this fungicide, but I need this one, even if the second one's a little bit more, because, say, I have a lot of tar spot. Well, I know I got to spend a lot on tar spot. Or when we're going to soybeans, if we have white mold, I know that sclerotia is very hard to find. I mean, you're trying to find a mouse turd out there that's about the size of it. So it's hard to pick that up. But if we do find it, it's like, okay, maybe we need to look at contans. Maybe we need to look at less pop, bigger spacing, whatever. It just takes a lot of the guesswork out of it.
Absolutely. And the same thing with like the in-furrow fungicides that we talked about earlier. You know, when we're defending against corn rootworm, we're putting a trade out there, and then we're also having like an insecticide in furrow or at plant. I think the same thing has to happen with some of these soil-borne diseases where we're having the seed treatment, but then we have an additional, you know, in furrow type treatment to mitigate that fusarium risk. Because I think in the seed treatment world, you know, a lot of seed treatments are not enough, you know, and we need to throw another active ingredient to make sure that we're defending against, you know, some of those really, really pesky diseases.
Definitely. So moving on a little bit, can you explain to everybody at home how REDSTAR fits in with Earthoptics and Pattern Ag?
Absolutely. So with REDSTAR, we have what they call their RX. So basically what that is they're utilizing Earthoptics services and all the different offerings that we have and fit that right into their REDSTAR lineup through their RX program. And what that allows REDSTAR to do is really place their products more efficiently. I think Ryan said it best when we were talking this summer. It's like, hey, we want to make sure that the right product gets on the right acre every time, because we are farmer first, and we want to make sure that, you know, we're suiting them the best that we can.
Definitely.
So I think that's kind of a great fit right there. You guys have great products. I mean, you guys have built a fantastic brand here. And I think that's something that, hey, if we can set ourselves even that next ladder up and apart from the competition to make sure that we're placing, you know, the right products on the right acre every single time, setting ourselves up for success, I think that's where it fits in.
Yes.
So, and, you know, especially with the REDSTAR branded products, you know, there is some uncertainty in the biologicals when you're talking on some farms. You know, maybe they've tried a biological in the past and it didn't work. Well, maybe that 80 that they tried it on had great biofertility levels.
Yeah.
Because we have fields that we check all the time that are, hey, we don't need to put a biological out here, but we do have, you know, that crop protection risk of like some kind of soil-borne disease where, hey, instead of paying $20 an acre for this biological, let's spend $20 an acre in crop protection and having that in-furrow fungicide. So it's not necessarily trying to sell you more. It's trying to sell you the right product.
So, Austin, we've learned about what the RX360 program can do to you. Can you tell our customers how much it's going to run them?
Yeah, so for the 360 Pro, which includes that high-res nutrient, the true nutrient, and then the biology analysis, which is our true bio, that's looking at about $16 an acre MSRP. So that gives you full data to those high-res nutrient maps, full level to having variable rate prescriptions it included in that cost, and then access to that crop planning tool where we can really fine tune products to your operation with the companies that you're already working with today.
And the nice part is when you look at 2.5 acre grid, you know, $13 to $14 an acre really isn't uncommon. So for only $2 an acre more, one, you're getting 100 times more precise data on your soil. Two, you're also getting that complete bio with all the different metrics in there for corn, soybeans, wheat, and a couple other different crops. So overall, it might be just a little bit more expensive, but it's a way better value.
Yes, you're getting basically a blueprint to your whole crop planting season. So when we're looking at that bio, it's understanding, hey, you know, where are our needs? You know, what can we fix? So, you talked about the infertile fungicide product trial. If I can find a way to get 20 extra bushels at a corn yield, and, you know, when we're looking at the biological side or the biofertility side, how can we find that next 5% of yield and be effective with it? I think that's kind of where, you know, that missing ingredient is. So I think that extra couple bucks an acre to get the bio really is not a problem. I think most guys just like absolutely throw it in.
Definitely, especially with all the information you're getting. So can you talk about REDSTAR's ability to set up people who might be interested and say they need a little extra money to start selling the REDSTAR 360 through us and as well through you?
Yeah, so there's a great opportunity to be an RX dealer through REDSTAR. So there is a good opportunity to help out your customers. Like the people we're targeting today are already working with customers. You know, how can you set yourself apart from your competition in your area by offering in this added service? And then you also would be able to have access to, you know, REDSTAR's products, you know, and just saying, hey, we have this issue. This is the problem. You know, this is a product that's going to help fix it. So having that added expertise, having guys like Coltin and Tom to talk to and understand, like, hey, these are the problems that are existing in your fields. These are the products that we actually see a really good return when we see these detrimental parts of your soil. So I think there's a huge fit opportunity to be a RX dealer through REDSTAR, just because, hey, if you want to know what's going on in your farmers' fields and making sure that they're set up for success going into next year, I think it's a no-brainer to have this as a part of your offering.
Awesome. And kind of we're going back to the beginning, but can you talk about the database that you guys have?
It's huge.
Because I want to leave people with this because it's insane how big it is.
So last year, we had the largest database. So we have terabasins of data. We're a big data company. We 3x that after the merger. So just to put in perspective where we were last year, when you look at like the human body, the Human DNA Project, we were way more data than them. When you look at the ocean, so like the ocean, they've done a lot of research, still don't know anything about the ocean. We don't know anything about soil. I mean, honestly, 70% of the tests that we take, so when we do that pound of soil, there's over 10 million reads. Sometimes it's higher, but I would say average is 10 million reads of DNA per 1 pound of soil. About 7 million of those reads, we have no idea what it is. It's called dark matter. So we are building the largest database, and we have people within our company that their sole job is trying to figure out, you know, what is that dark matter? How can we really understand what it is? Is it going to be a yield bumper or a yield booster? Or is it going to be a yield negator? So that's something that, you know, when we talk about the data of our company and how large our database is, you really can't compare it to anything. It's so big that when they are running through it, it crashes computers. So like we had a big company kickoff in Minneapolis a couple weeks ago, and talking to some of the data science people, and like they have to get new computers because when they go into it and try to dig in deep, it'll crash it. I mean, like you need really high-end computers with a lot of data, a lot of space, and still that's not enough.
Okay.
So,
and one thing too with that huge data set is the fact that in order for a metric to be put in there, you need 700,000 to 1 million data points before you will put that on the report.
Yeah, so if we don't have above a 90% comfortability with the result, like if it's not above 90% accurate, we will not put that into our dashboard. So we have plenty of things that we're looking at, other crops, other diseases, but we want to make sure that it's accurate data because we don't want to just throw something out there and put our name on it and it be not good, not good information. We want to make sure that everything that you get from our dashboard is good and accurate data. So
Definitely. Sweet. Well, did we miss anything?
Let's see.
Oh, with new data coming in, will you backdate that on all the tests because you have the data set already?
Absolutely. So one of the cool things with our dashboard is it's cloud-based. So let's say we have a new analytic come in, that'll backdate to past data results that you've had in the past. And then you can really understand like, oh, that's what was wrong in 2023 or 2024. You know, maybe it was diplodia, you know, some random analytic that we've just added. You know, you talk about like some of the biofertility metrics. We're really going to be breaking out some of those here in the future. So just really having a deeper dive of like, hey, this might be the type of fungi that we need to look at, or this is the type of trichoderma species that we need to apply. So it's really digging in deep to try to figure out, you know, what is our biggest yielding limiting factor.
Awesome. Perfect. Well, thank you, Austin, and thank you everybody listening to the Red Effect podcast, brought to you by REDSTAR. REDSTAR, where our red makes you green.